Good afternoon, everyone. I'm J. Lenora Bressler, and welcome to the April 14, 2020 edition of the Bible Delight in the Details. Last week, I hope you enjoyed our day-by-day walking with Christ through the Holy Week, culminating, of course, in glorious Easter. But there's a few more things that we want to say about this whole resurrection, and one of those things has to do with the so-called doubting Thomas. I want to remind you that Thomas had been a very faithful disciple. In fact, he was the one who, when Jesus said that he was going to die in Jerusalem, Thomas said, "All right, then let's go to Jerusalem." So, he comes across, kind of gets bad shrift in the Gospels because of what is seen as his doubt. But I think, frankly, there's more to this. We always tend to emphasize the doubt and the lack of faith, but I'm not so sure that that's the main thing we're supposed to get out of this. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But let's first read about this. Now, most of the disciples, apparently, except for Thomas and, of course, Judas, had been in that upper room. And so going toward the evening of Easter Sunday, they saw Jesus. Jesus appeared in the midst of them. But we're told that Thomas was not there. And then in John chapter 20, picking up at 24. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said to him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe." And after 8 days again, his disciples were within, and Thomas was with them. Then Jesus came, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, "Peace unto you." And then saith he to Thomas, "Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing." And Thomas answered and said unto him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus saith unto him, "Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen, and yet have believed." Now, there is no question, I think Jesus makes it very clear that it is important that we understand that Thomas was being, to some extent, reprimanded because he had not been quicker to embrace the truth of the gospel. But Jesus did come to him, and he did meet him where he was, and he did offer to provide that physical proof, even unto touching in a very intimate way the body of the risen Christ, the body of God. I want you to think about that. That was that's really something for God to allow someone who is still in his human state, a sinful human, saved but not yet glorified. He was willing to have him touch the resurrected body of God. That was a great kindness that Jesus had. So yes, there was a reprimand, but I would say that it was a fairly gentle reprimand because he still was going to meet Thomas where he was. But before we're so terribly down on old Thomas, there's a couple of interesting things here. You notice I sort of emphasized that when Thomas was talking to the disciples, he said, "Unless I put my hand and I'm the one that feels it, I will not believe." It's interesting too that Thomas has another name in the Bible. Did you ever notice that? Didymus, which means twin. Now, in this case, I think perhaps we should think of Thomas as our twin. Because let's be honest, Thomas wanted and needed an individual connection with the Lord to believe the gospel. Now, in a way, so does every single person. Because think about it. My dad often says to me, the Bible is not the Word of God until it is the Word of God to a person. How many times have you maybe tried to share the gospel and you've told someone how much Jesus has done for you personally and how your relationship with him has helped you in your personal journey? In fact, a lot of us have been told to witness that way. And that's okay up to a point, except that it does open the door to someone responding, well, that's great, what? For you. But that's not for me. You see, what we're seeing here is Thomas is acting like a lot of people, kind of like the twin of most of us. We can see other people having great enjoyment and satisfaction from something. Maybe it's God, maybe it's sports, maybe it's their career, whatever it is. But it doesn't really affect us until it affects us. It's got to be made internal. There's got to be a personal experience. It's also interesting that we're told it's 8 days later. And you remember we talked about the significance of the 8th day. Jesus got up on the 8th day. He was making all things new. We are living in a new creation because of what Jesus, Joshua, what Jesus did. And we talked about the fact that the baptismal fonts were in the eight sides, because they understood, the early Christians, and even into the Middle Ages and the High Renaissance, they understood this, that we are living in a new creation. But that also means, as Paul said, we are a new creation ourselves. We are a new creature when we come to Christ. So it's interesting that on the 8th day, these disciples saw the new situation. They saw the risen Lord. They became aware that they were now new creatures, in the sense of that now they really could know that they too were going to be resurrected. Thomas had missed out on that. Thomas came later, but he had his own 8th day, didn't he? And we all do. We all have come to God in different ways at different times. And so while, yes, there is absolutely, Jesus is chiding him, saying, you should have been faster, Thomas. You should have been faster on this. He also met him where he is. And I think that it is important that we understand that the way Jesus has opened your eyes may not be the same way he's going to open somebody else's eyes, including family and friends. And so when you get frustrated, as those disciples clearly were frustrated with old Thomas, and possibly he with them, always remember, Jesus makes you a new creature. When, however the circumstances are, you have that direct one-on-one meeting with him. It's the ultimate come to Jesus meeting. And he will meet you where you are. It's actually a beautiful thing, old Thomas. By the way, kind of just a little interesting tidbit. Catholics seem to believe that Thomas actually did reach out and did touch the risen Lord, whereas Protestants, so much in the Reformation was faith alone, tend to think that he did not actually require the actual physical touch. And that is why you'll see different renderings in artwork about whether he's actually touching or not. You can often kind of tell from that whether the artist was a Catholic or a Protestant. Just a little tidbit, a little fun fact there. I hope that you and all those you love and care about will have that intimate, one-on-one individual relationship as you have your Come to Jesus meeting. I'm J. Lenora Bressler. Visit me on the next edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. Have a great day.